I am a huge fan of Christian apologist videos. Oh, there's nothing more enjoyable than to watch some young Christian or even older Christian who believes the fairy tale try to defend their religion, try to defend a book literally that was written 2,000 plus 22, whatever it is, years ago in the Bronze Age. But my favorite Christian apologist argument is, and I'm sure if anyone's ever read or listened to any Christian apologist, they'll know exactly where I'm going with this. My favorite apologist for when they apologize for the God of the Old Testament and even in the New Testament, but when they're trying to defend slavery and incest and the violence towards other people that weren't Israelis, that weren't Israelites, and they always, and it's such an easy argument to make against them, and they don't see it because they're Christians. The argument goes, well, you know, society looked a lot different back then, and how we view slavery has changed dramatically. Now, you don't even have to make the argument. They made it for you. So you're telling me your all-powerful God who knew me before I was born and has a plan for my life and knows the future, knows every hair on my head, all the crap in the Bible, but he couldn't see into the future of a reality that he created? Really? So God is a victim of society? So God had at the time, he was like, I'm only going to come down here. I'm only going to talk to you monkeys once. And we're going to stay pretty humanistic in this. I'm not going to put anything in the Bible that says, eventually, in thousands of years, slavery will no longer exist the way it does today. There's no prophecy towards the future when it concerns Christians. And it concerns God in general. There is no prophecy about the future. Oh, there's some vagaries about the world ending. And that when Jesus said, you're going to witness many of you will not see death before the world ends and all of that sort of thing. Because Christianity at its heart, and the Bible at its heart, is a death cult. And it was written as though every generation was going to experience tribulation, was going to experience the rapture, and the world was going to end in their lifetimes. Now, the Bible clearly says some of you will be dead, but some of you will not see death before the end of times. Now, this fucking has been used against Christians and to convince Christians that they are the last generation on the planet. Now, why is this significant in 2025? I think it's pretty fairly obvious to say that the current Trump administration and its Christo-fascist Heritage Foundation and its Christo-fascist people inside the government and inside state governments who want to put the 10 Commandments up in every school, in public schools. They want to put the 10 fucking commandments up in public schools, taxpayer-funded schools. Anyway, but this argument is used as though it's an argument. This argument of, well, you know, times were different. The times were different, and we looked at slavery differently, and so God looked at everything differently? How is that? How do you reconcile those two things? You can't. The real point of this is that people don't, and a lot of Christian apologists will not, they assiduously avoid that issue because they know that it kind of takes everything apart at that point. Like if your society, the real answer is your society created a God, not God created a society. And that is so painfully obvious from this argument that it almost is laughable and should be completely, anything after that a person says should be completely ignored. First of all, Christian apologists who spend their lives studying the Bible and trying to defend it are people to me that have a profound mental illness, or they're a grifter. Because you can't really read the Bible and study it in any significant way and come away with a rationalization for all of the horrible shit that the Christian God has done. New Testament, Old Testament, Hebrew, Greek, doesn't matter. God was a real piece of shit. And he allowed his people to do unspeakable things to foreigners, like enslave them and kill them and mistreat them. And this is indefensible. But Christians defend it. They constantly defend it. They have to rationalize it to make that Bible work for them literally. Now, of course, there are people who are Christians who are not literalists. They don't believe that literally the Red Sea parted. They don't really believe literally that Jesus met the devil and the Satan. They don't really believe all that. They like all of the C.S. Lewis bullshit in the Bible. They like they created this 20th century sort of 19th and 20th century sort of God that is a kind, wonderful, thoughtful, intellectual, Chronicles of Narnia bullshit. And it's the CS. I've coined this, and I know that biblical scholars are like, shut up. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And they're probably right. But from my own interactions with the religion and the writing of C.S. Lewis, he's the reason we have all of this bullshit Christianity, this personal relationship with Jesus. Not only that, but it appeals to boomers. Boomers love that self-centered, oh no, Jesus is your homeboy. Jesus is you and Jesus is your co-pilot. It's you and Jesus, ride or die. They love that because it fits into the selfish nature of Americans and how isolated we are as well. And how community is less important, or not less important, but it's less utilized. I don't know if that's the correct word in America, because of vehicles, because of cars, because of where we work and compared to where we live. Just there's a bunch of different reasons why Americans are very isolated and are very autonomized. And it's getting worse because of the internet and social media. It doesn't help. And so Christians have developed so many coping mechanisms for the Bible instead of just letting it go because they're superstitious. You shouldn't need to do this much coping for a God. You shouldn't have to apologize for a God. Think about that. But that's what apologists are. They're apologizing for God, the inerrant word of a creator who created the universe, who created everything. He's the reason for the season. He's, blah, blah, blah. But you then have to use so many coping mechanisms to justify what was said because it's a book written by humans 2,500 years ago, roughly. That's the core of the argument. If society changes, then God starts to change. See my point with the C.S. Lewis bullshit? It goes from a horror, nightmare, genocidal God to a kinder Jesus who is a European Jesus who has long hair and great abs, and he's sitting around with kids, and he's feeding people that are hungry, and he's visiting people in prison, and he's clothing the naked, and he's an amazing rabbi who shocked the other rabbis by all of this bullshit. I don't know if Jesus ever existed. There's some great stuff about typology and Joseph Atwill, and I'm sure it's been debunked by Christians, and it was written so long ago. Who the fuck knows? But there's the theory that this religion was created by this, by the Caesars in ancient Rome to pacify rebellious Jews in Judea, to get them to buy into the Old Testament prophecy of a Messiah. The Dead Sea Scrolls mention a Messiah. Nowhere in the Dead Sea Scrolls is Jesus mentioned. Nothing about Jesus. They mention vague things about Messiahs. And really the Dead Sea Scrolls are about the time and place, not about a historical Messiah. So it's odd that something so close, look where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, something so close to clearly where Jesus would have been part of during roughly the same time, surely they would have mentioned him, but they don't. which is odd, but never mind that. But these Christians who make this, I'm going to just leave you one more time with it because I think it needs to be repeated. That, well, yes, the Bible has some real inerrancies and has some problems, but it's because the society that the book was written during is the reason why. And now that we've gotten older and we've gotten more mature and we've progressed in science and technology, well, things in society change. And therefore, the way we view the Bible should do that as well. Not take what Jesus said or did in the Bible, or not take what the Christian God gave us and not do what he said or live in the way that he wanted us to live. No. What we're going to do is we're going to apologize for a book that he is the author of through human beings. Because we have seen societal shifts. Slavery is no longer accepted. Incest with your daughter and then you sell her into the fucking slavery isn't really, it's kind of frowned upon in America and in most societies. And never mind all the genocide. Never mind all of the fucking, if you don't believe in me, cast to the wind, 1,000 pieces and cast your ass to the fucking wind. The violence of it, the render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, the inconsistencies, all of these things are simply, to an apologist, sign of the times. God was a deity of the times. He was a prisoner of the moment. God was just a prisoner of the moment. How many backflips do you have to go try to do before you realize that, oh my God, why am I doing this? What am I apologizing for? What am I at? Because my parents were religious? Or I found religion because I'm poor or working class? And I have now identified with religion in a society that wants me to identify religion rather than go after capitalists and go after the system that is making them poor and miserable? This is the same control mechanism that has been used since before the Bible was written. And the Bible allows a control mechanism that is still working in 2025. And the people that allow themselves to get controlled, it's always people convincing them to do things. It's always their pastor or their Bible teacher or their seminary, whatever, or divinity school or whatever the fuck, Moody Bible College. It's always somebody telling them how to interpret the Bible correctly. It's never them just picking, and the ones that do and start their little churches and strip malls and shit and televangelize and are literal Christians, are fundamentalist Christians. Those people exist. Those people don't care. The Bible to them slavery to them is perfectly fine, and because they can bring it back to debtors. Well, if you owe money, you should be a slave. I've heard fundamentalists make this argument. Well, if you can't pay your bills, maybe we should bring back debtor prison. Maybe we should I know that usury is a complicated thing and that sometimes people get taken advantage of depending on, doesn't matter. You need to be a slave for 6 years and then I'll let you go once your debts are paid. And that's if you're not a foreigner that's if you're from Israel. That's if you're an Israelite. So, Christian apologists lose the argument when they trap God in time. When they are so arrogant to tell you that read Genesis and talk about how he created everything, time and space, and that everything, and he's all of it. But at the same time, he was for slavery because society was for slavery, because human beings were cool with it. So God became cool with it. And of course, through our progression, through progress, things have changed, but we still need to hold on to this book because rich people have told me I need to read it. Rich people have propagandized me and tell me that if I don't, I'm going to burn in hell. And I'm not going to see my dead loved ones and dead animals and dead pets as when I was a kid. It's fear-based bullshit. It's a death cult. It's garbage. It's nonsense. Stop reading the goddamn thing. And anybody who tries to push it on you, tell them to stop as well. Thank you for listening.